No, I don't think.
There's a story that the Secret Service went in and took pictures of the body.
This looks like
You know,
tile here.
what I'm
That's
wondering,
tile
is this the skull from somebody that was used to make those x-rays?
Yeah,
Could be.
we
We
think
don't
that's
know that.
somebody else.
We
what
do
this
not know
is.
that's
I
the
think
president's
this
skull.
is somebody else. This right here could be even the edge of a ball peen hammer. We're talking
Yes.
about the hammer.
Yeah.
See also here in this area.
You want to show this to the camera, please?
This is an area.
Okay, and what's this? You're talking about this right here?
Did he have a trach in place when he left the apartment? The trach tube was removed?
Okay,
So
where
he
you
arrived just
say
like
this might be a
No,
hole and here.
Well, the
now
trach
what I'm
tube should
what
be
I'm
there.
talking about is that could I see those x-rays? And this is rather tenuous, admittedly, but in these x-rays that show defects in the front part, the anterior part of the skull, when all of us saw defects back here,
Right.
both at Bethesda and at Parkland, all of us, every one of us, and we made those statements independent of one another, not in a group. So this was fabricated from something. Now what I'm wondering about, as I've sat here and thought about it, is this the skull of another body, and the skull had been deformed in some way. This circular part here, we were talking about the phone call from the doctor who said he saw a head being attacked with a hammer.
Yes.
That could be possibly a defect from a ball peen hammer. That
And we don't know whose head it was.
No, we don't know whose head that is, but
But I mean,
that's
do we know whose
the
head?
anterior part of the skull. This is the posterior part. The neck is here, and this is the skull that was used to make these x-rays. That's my supposition. Back from the head. Whether it fell completely free and loose or not, I don't know, but it fell back out of the wound into my field of vision.
Dr. McClellan, I'd like to, and Audrey, I'm sure you remember this also, but I regret that we don't have all the other doctors and nurses here, but every single doctor and nurse that wrote their report or testified to the Warren Commission stated that the cerebellum was lost or blasted out, and that was coming out of the head. This was later revised by some witnesses after seeing some of this alleged autopsy photographs and so on. But correct me if I'm wrong, didn't everyone say that the cerebellum was, as you have said, either damaged or missing?
That was my strong impression.
And yes, sir.
As I've said, I did not see the wound, but I was told, and literally the way it was described, that the cerebellum was swinging in the breeze. Basically, it
was hanging out.
That's right. It was hanging out.
I was also told, and again, this is purely hearsay, not what I saw, that Mrs. Kennedy, when she first came in, was holding a piece of the president's brain in her hand.
Yeah. Now, how does this memory of the cerebellum, what they're describing with hanging out and swinging, how does this square with what all of you remember?
To me, it's not congruent with what was seen. The other impression I had was that the damage to the brain was not, really did not match the damage to the skull or to the wound as we first saw it when we unwrapped the head. It was, again, and I made a statement once before. And it was purely a actually it was purely a first impression. The brain was a small brain, and for some reason, and I apologize to Ms. Bell, it came into my mind that it was a female brain. Now, I don't really know why that came about. Okay, I know I would definitely be in trouble, but again, too, is that I think my impression that I can solidly state is the fact is that the brain did seem to be small, clarifying that with the fact is that my impression initially of the body was that he was a much smaller man than I anticipated seeing. The brain that I saw and that I actually helped infuse was not damaged to the extent that you would have expected. There was a small portion of it missing in the appropriate area, but the rest of it seemed to be more traumatized. In other words, it seemed to be gelled. It was a very reflecting back to some of the relationship between the people in the gallery and the people on the floor. Getting back to the back wound, when they could not probe the back wound to the front of the body, there were some animosities that came out of the gallery as primarily indicating you don't really know what you're doing.
You mean somebody wanted that wound to come out somewhere
Yes.
in the front?
My impression was that somebody wanted the wound in the back to come out the front. Now, if you remember back, we did not know that that was a bullet wound. We thought, and I think all of the doctors there have made the same statement, we assumed that that was a trach. Now, these wounds are similar to what I saw, except what I saw was a cleaner surgical incision on both sides. You know, one of the questions I had that I brought today was, how long did the trach tube stay in? Did it stay in long enough for, you know, the body to start, you know, the rigor mortis
You mean
to
it
set
was
in?
taken out before you got it? It wasn't in when you got it?
No, it was not here. No, it was not there.
Okay. Because
Rob, did you actually see the neck wound prior to any
No.
surgical?
No.
It was already...
They had already enlarged the
What's,
wound.
what's Mac,
when I got
Perry,
it.
and Charlie say about that?
Well, Mac said that it looked like an entrance wound to him. The initial small hole that he enlarged to make the tracheostomy, he said looked like an entrance wound. And one of the doctors from Bethesda, I remember we officed together, the next afternoon called Malcolm and talked to him about the wound in the neck.
I think
I
that was
remember
Dr.
hearing
Hughes.
Malcolm, I believe that was, yeah, I'd forgotten. And they discussed that and the nature of the wound at that time.
For a lot of macerated scalp
Right.
on the head here.
Yeah.
Okay. What is this picture? What could it be? I mean, was it taken after the head was put back together? Was it?
That's a possibility, or somebody's dreaming about it. One, I don't know what, but that's not what I saw.
Is this what you saw? No. Is this? Do you think this picture is fake or
I believe it is. I believe it's a paste up.
composite picture?
Yeah, composite type
Do you,
picture.
as a photographer, do you know how do they make a composite?
Well, first off, you have to have the pictures that you want to put together. Then you start etching them out, tape them together, glue them together, press them, rephotograph them, retouch the negatives, and then you can go ahead and reprint them again.
All right.
As long as you get all the irregularities out.
The government claims that this picture demonstrates that the president was shot from behind, and when this was examined in 1967, there is an entry wound here. And Paul's pointed out that in some of the other photographs, such as Exhibit C, that it does not show in the colic area this wound here in the colic area, which in 1967 was discovered it was supposed to be an entry wound that the autopsy report placed near the head or near the hairline in the occipital protuberance. And then it had moved 4 inches up to the top. And Dr. Humes and Dr. Boswell, when they examined it before the House committee, said, well, I have a little trouble with the fact that this has moved 4 inches from where we placed it in the autopsy report. Yet all of the witnesses some estimates, I think, in William Manchester were 600 pounds.
Body and everything, probably get close to 600.
and it was bronze.
Yeah.
And would you be do you know what a shipping casket looks like?
Oh, yeah. I worked at a funeral home.
Yeah.
We shipped a lot of bodies.
You're a
yeah.
retired police, or you are a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
You are a retired police officer. That's right. So you feel confident that the body arrived in a shipping casket, which is entirely different from a ceremonial casket intended for funerals.
Yes.
This was a ceremonial casket he went out in.
Yeah.
She walked, I mean, I was right there. They walked out the door. She walked right behind her with her hand on top of it.
Right.
Could you describe the whole scene from the time you helped put the body in the casket?
Right. I had the head portion, and Dennis McGuire, my rider, had the bottom portion, and his hand would go here, mine would go just above here, and we'd pick him up straight, turn around, put him in the casket. We closed the lid, we sealed it, and then the priest blessed the casket and holy water and everything. Then he put a crucifix, had a
Were
crucifix
you
on
waiting before you put him in the coffin and sealed it? Had you been waiting for the priest?
Oh yeah, he had not had his last rites. No. That was
You waited what? How long?
probably 30, 40 minutes.
Is that right?
That's about right. I remember now that
Did anybody
there was
else come
something.
in the room, and were you all in the room the whole time, or one of the nurses or somebody? Could anybody have come in and tampered with the body at that time?
I would
I
say
was
no.
there during the last rites.
And was Mrs. Kennedy in that room, would you say, throughout the time
Yes,
Yeah.
that you were waiting for the priest?
Mm-hmm.
yes.
So that nobody could have come in and done anything,
No.
or put the body in a
No.
shipping
No way.
casket and taken him through the tunnel out of the hospital?
No, there's too many people around there.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure this probably been discussed elsewhere, but I recall vividly the casket being brought out of trauma room 1, and Earl Rose tried to push it back in. He said, "You can't take this body; it needs an autopsy under state law or something like that." And he was just surrounded by a bunch of Secret Service and FBI who didn't know each other, and he was slammed up against the wall, and that casket went right out the door.
So you put the lid on the coffin, and then would you tell what happened all the way to the airport?
Well, from the beginning, like the doctor says, we started out of the trauma room with it, and anyway, someone says, "No, you're not taking it. You're not taking us out," and they pushed us back in. And Secret Service said, "Let's go." So they would push us out, and we finally got the thing out of the room and squared into the hallway. And I remember we went through maternity section, which ambulance drivers were never allowed in maternity section unless we was taking the bodies through.
Yeah.
And that was very unusual that we went that way. And when we would try, we would push the body, or I had the head of the casket, and